Francis David from Southgate Imaging. So this morning, over coffee, I was thinking about all the Yamaha guitars I've owned. I didn't start out trying to be a Yamaha fan. It just kind of happened. So what I found is I've owned 25 late model Yamaha guitars in the last 5 to 10 years. So I guess I have a disease. But I had a lot of fun with them. And I'm going to go through by category and tell you what my favorites were, and I'll tell you why. And some of the results might surprise you, and some of them won't if you've been following me. Anyway, so the categories I picked were budget, which would be basically Yamaha FS and FG models like the current 800s. I've actually never owned a 700 or 720. So the budget models, then the L series, and we all know the L series is Yamaha's luxury brand. And then the red labels. And I've owned more of these than I thought I had owned. Anyway, so let's get started. So I'll put the graphic on. Here's let me get my paper because I had a lot of them. So the FGFSs. So these would be like an FG800, FS800, whatever. So I own one FG800M, which is the kind of the matte version, the least expensive one. I've owned two FG800 Naturals, the gloss ones. And I've owned one FG820, which is like the kind of turted up model of the 800. They have a full bonding and stuff like that. The FS800s, which I have the sweet spot for, you can tell from my channel, I guess. I've owned two FS800T tinted models. I've owned 3 of the natural models, and I've owned one Autumn Burst. I've owned an FSX 800 natural, that's the one with the pickup in it and the cutaway. And I've owned an FSTA, that's the small concert size TA. And I've owned FGTA, that's the dreadnought size. They're all nice guitars. There wasn't a lemon in a bunch of them. I love buying them. People buy them as their first guitar and want to move up. Often when I'm talking to the person, the guitar they moved up to and that they're selling me for a song isn't as nice a guitar as what they bought. I had one guy that went from a beautiful FG800 that was like just mint. It was a really nice guitar. And he bought a used Seagull, which normally he was thinking, well, the Seagulls are better guitars. The one he bought was rough. It needed a neck reset. It needed work. It was never going to play good, and it really wasn't worth putting the money into it. Felt sorry for him, but I bought the FG800. I helped him set up his Seagull and helped him where I could. But I was like, man, you had a better guitar. Seagulls are great, but not when they need a neck reset. Anyway, of the budget guitars, probably by far my favorite was an FS800 Autumn Burst that I actually sold to a subscriber locally, so I can't remember your name, but you got a honey of a guitar. That guitar sounded really good, and it was a looker. I was at a jam, and there's a guy playing a Martin D18. He's looking at this $200 Yamaha, and he's saying, man, that's a nice guitar. That sounds nice, and it did. So of all of those budget ones, that's it. The TAs were nice, but TA is... Once you've had a TA for a month or two, you tend to just forget about the effects and just enjoy the sound of the guitar. That's what I find. And even at a jam, it's really not appropriate. You can overdrive the whole thing with all your reverb and stuff like that. It's just not my jam. But of the budget ones was the Autumn Burst. And I don't want to say exactly what I paid for it, but it wasn't an expensive guitar at all. And even new, they're under $300 Canadian. So the budget, that's it. It was the Autumn Burst FS800. The L series, I've owned a fair number of these. Here's the graphic. 2 LL16 Naturals. And what I got to say about those is they are smoking guitars. I just reviewed a Martin D10E, which is the same price as them, and the LL16 sweeps the floor of that Martin. It really does. And I got to say, the LL16, in my mind, was far better than any inspired by Gibson I've owned. I've played inspired by Gibson hummingbirds that may move me a little more than an LL16. The only downside of the LL16 is I never had an emotional connection with them. I say, this is a great guitar. It sounds good, plays good, but I've never had this connection with them. And I say, I want it. I'd love to keep this guitar. Just never have it. They're very good guitars for the money. And that would be my criticism. I owned a LLTA and an LSTA. The LSTA was a beautiful guitar in the burst. That was a really nice guitar. But again, I found with the TAs, Trans Acoustics, that I just don't hang on to them. They're fun for a month or two, and then you just kind of say, well, whatever, and you're just playing the guitar without the effects anyway, and you move on. A couple interesting guitars. I had an LS16M, which is very unusual. You don't see that. That's the mahogany version of the LS16, and that sounded really good. Interesting story. When I bought that, there used to be a music store in Halifax, Citadel Music. They're still around. They have different kind of ownership and management now. The manager in there was a really good guy. But they were always struggling. And if you go there at the end of the month, they basically cut you a deal to make rent, which was hilarious, but that's the way it was. So one day I went in there and I got an LS16M and I got a red label, an FG3 we'll talk about later. I bought two of them and they were like super deals. This was pre-COVID, and I'm thinking I paid $600 for the brand new for the LS16M, and I probably paid $750 for the red label. They were just smoking deals. But the price and availability of all these changed over COVID, and the prices haven't gone down that much on new instruments. Probably they have on used. Anyway, so that's kind of where that was. LS16M. That was it was a great sounding guitar. The LS6, I had a burst, which I really liked. And I had what I currently have is an LJ6 dark tint. And then I had a couple others, the AC series. I can't remember the exact model numbers, but they were very good sounding guitars. They had great pickups in them. They played really good. I had 2-3 series. One was like the Dreadnought, and one was the Concert, and they were excellent, both excellent guitars. Probably the Dreadnought was one of the best sounding guitars I've ever played. It was an amazing sounding guitar. I think it was rosewood, can't remember now exactly. They were really nice guitars. They're sleepers. The only downside is they have the narrower fretboard width and the nut width. So if you fingerstyle and you want something a little wider, they're not for you. But at the time, they were just great smoking guitars. Actually, one of those was a deal. The concert from the same guy at Citadel Music. It was in the month I was in. I said, basically, when he says, "What's your best deal in the store for me today?" And he said, "This has been sitting here for a year on just in a shelf kind of thing." And he said, "Take this," and it was just an amazing guitar. But they move on. Now, of all of these, before I go, the other one I had was a FG01. I think it was called an FG01. And these were, most of my Yamahas have been like recent models. This was a guitar that sat under a bed for 20 years. It was a guy that had bought it for his daughter. She started to play it, and it just got forgotten. It sat under a thing. The guy had it on Kijiji. That's like our Craigslist here in Canada. He had it on Kijiji for 6 months. No one was interested in it, and the ad just falls to the back. I stumbled across it one day. I met up with him, and the thing was dead mint. The thing didn't have any. There's no belly burst, budge. There was nothing. The thing was just like unbelievable. It needs a truss rod adjustment and a little setup, but that was it. It was just an incredible instrument, and it was the instrument that it was the bridge between the budget series and what became the LLs. And it was just a kind of a hybrid kind of thing. It had the narrow nut, and it had the gold tuners that the current L series have. And it was just a smoking deal. I sold it, and the guy that bought it was a big Yamaha fan. He drove from New Glasgow, so he drove like 2.5 hours to come buy the guitar. It was a nice guitar, and it sounded really good. Probably shouldn't have let it go, but there you go. Now, all of those LLs, and there was a lot of LLs and a lot of really good LLs. My favorite, really, is the one I currently have, the LJ6 dark tint. Why? It looks a little different to me in the dark tint. It's nice. The J, the LJ, the J is the jumbo, and there's not many of them around. They don't come around up very often. I don't even know if Yamaha is truly producing them anymore, but they're just smoking guitars. Playability is great. I don't have this big dreadnought thing to kind of get my arm around because they have the narrow waist. They're very comfortable, so it's almost as comfortable as a concert. It's really a small to mid-sized jumbo is what they are, and they sound amazing. And this one, even though it's a 6 series, so it's laminate back and side, it has a solid Engelmann spruce top, and it's a smoking guitar. So I would say of the L series, there's better guitars in the L series, but for the money, for how surprised I was, I guess, with the guitar, was the LJ6. In dark tint, because dark tint, I like the color. It just looks really nice. Probably if it was the natural, I wouldn't like it as much. I just like the tint. Anyway, to me, that was a smoking guitar, and the L series, that's my current highlight. So, the red labels. So, I haven't owned as many, although let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've owned 5 red labels, so I'm a minor disease here. Which one? So, the first one I got was an FG3. It was one of these trades from my buddy, or not trades. It was one of the ones I bought the two that day. It was funny. It was my wife noticed when I came home. Let's just say that. Anyway, the FG3 was probably one of the best sounding guitars I've ever owned. Probably shouldn't have got rid of it. If you sit down and listen to a good player play a D18, and then he goes to an FG3 red label. Man, the FG3 sounds really good. One day I was at Long McQuaid and the guy was playing a D18. He was a good bluegrass player, and he was playing for a while. I was talking to him. I said, just try this FG3, and his eyes just went, wow. And he looks at the price tag, and he looks at the price tag of the Martin. He's like, wow. He left with the FG3. I didn't get a commission from Long McQuaid. They are that good. So don't sit on the FG3s. And as soon as one comes up locally, I'll have it. I just really like them. The history with that FG3, I ended up in Long McQuaid, and I had a yearning for a concert model, and they had an FS3 in stock. I used one in stock, and it was mint. And I know the kind of the manager of that particular store, and we chatted, and he was like, he did basically a straight trade. The FS3 was sitting on his shelf for a while, and he knew he could probably sell an FG quicker. A lot dreadnoughts seem to sell quicker in our area, and he was saying, we'll just do that. I'll do you a favor. And so I ended up moving on the FG3 and got the FS3, and the FS3 was a great guitar. Since then, I've owned 2 FSX3s. Don't ask me why. And then I owned an FS5, which is the Japanese kind of Luther model. Of them, I gotta say, I don't think the fives are worth the money unless you get a spectacular one. The one I had was okay, but I wouldn't call it a spectacular one. Right now, I have an FSX3, and that I really like. And I think I would rather have actually a 3 series with a pickup, because they have the atmosphere pickup and atmosphere pickup. They're a really nice pickup, and in my mind, I would almost rather have that than an FS5. I'd put my money into the pickup, which is something you don't normally do. You don't normally put money in electronics, put it into the woods. But in that case, I just really like the FSX3. So in the Red Label series, for me, the one that spoke to me, and sometimes you just get one that stands out, I would say it was FSX3. So that's where I was at. So anyway, the takeaway from all of this, what are the lessons learned? Well, I think it's 28 Yamahas I've owned. I'm actually looking at them, updating this as I go. I think it's around 28. Maybe it's closer to 30. I would round up rather than round down. So say it's 30. I've never had a bad one. I've never picked up a Yamaha that I regretted buying. The quality control is so good, and they just hold up even when they're not maintained correctly. And I got to tell you, I don't think I've ever bought something in the budget category that I was talking about, the FGFSs, that was maintained properly. But they can stand up to not being humidified in the winter in Canada, and you just have to, clean up the frets a little bit. They don't require a lot of work, and then, like say, you just don't run into bad ones. And really, when you see them advertised, you don't see them with cracked fretboards or anything like that, no matter how poorly they've been maintained. They just are very durable guitars, probably overbuilt, but they stand up and they don't create problems. So I would say that would be the number one thing. Another thing I would say is the red labels from the setup side are the most inconsistent. So I can buy the cheap FS and FG 800s all day long, adjust the dress rod, maybe lower the saddle a touch, and have no problems. Very seldom even have to dress frets. It's just the budget ones are set up perfect. They really can be set up perfect. The red labels always seem to take more work. I don't know why. It's just the way it is. And I think they've had some minor quality problems with Yamaha with them. So if I was going to spend more time inspecting a guitar, it would be the red label. It's just kind of the way they are. But when you get them set up and you get them playing the way you like, it's well worth it. They are that good. They stand up to any D18 or 00018 there is. My experience, that's the way it is. I don't go in with a Pro Martin bias. I'm going in, I don't really care. And to me, they're that good. And the other thing is, basically at this point, I'll purchase any FS 800 I can, because I just love playing with them. I love setting them up. And they're just a lot of fun. You can go out to jams and you never worry about them. You got like $100 or $200 in guitar. I don't care about them. No, I don't abuse them, but I can have a lot of fun with them. So I would say, man, those FS 800s are just, you can't go wrong with them. Anyway, I don't know if this is what you were looking for or not. There's not one major one that stands out. I think it is the ones in the category that have really impressed me. Anyway, I hope you find this useful. I enjoyed going through and make my list today. It was just, I didn't realize the list was so long, to be honest. I have a disease. Anyway, if you like what you're seeing, please like, subscribe. Any comments, let me know. If you're as big a Yamaha freak as me, let me know. Let me know your Yamaha stories in the comments. It's always entertaining. Anyway, have a great day. Thanks.